Morning Toast.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. We have two very special people in the building today, all the way from Ann Arbor. What, about at least a half hour away, in about an hour since all the construction. But welcome to the Morning Toast podcast, Lisa and Wei Bee. All right.
Thank you, Bill.
You bet. You bet. It's great to see you guys again. So we've had a visit before. I think it was, we said about a year and a half or so ago, you were in the building. We weren't doing any of this crazy stuff yet, or maybe we were. We just didn't have things set up yet to do it. But I'm so glad you guys were able to come by, and appreciate you making the stop. So I've been dying to learn about Sweetwaters in the business. And like I think I said earlier, I love asking questions about the beginning, because sometimes I never know what I'm going to hear. Now, you guys, I understand you both grew up in the restaurant business, and from different families, of course, but you kind of met in Ann Arbor. I want to talk about that. So you're local. It's fun to see all the success happen right here in our backyard in Michigan. And I was just at your anniversary, and not your anniversary, but your business anniversary in Ann Arbor this summer. Yes. And that was the 20th, right?
30th.
That was the 30th. My goodness, even more bespoke than the 20th. And that was a really cool event. My wife and I stopped by, and you guys had some salsa dancing. You had some food and some amazing coffee and tea, and just what a fun time. So anyway, enough about me. Why don't I ask the question? You guys can tell me who's gonna take it. This is where I get to find out who answers first, right? And give me the story of the beginning of Sweetwaters, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about all the history leading up to it.
Do you want me to take it? Or you
Yeah,
want to take it?
definitely.
It's up to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the story of how we started Sweetwaters?
Yeah.
So we were both just graduated from the University of Michigan, and I think we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do after graduation. And because we both come from restaurant backgrounds, we thought, would we open a restaurant? Yes or no? And just because of how much capital it takes to open a restaurant, we decided probably that's not something. We were in our, I think I was like 25. Wei was a couple years older than me. We just didn't have the ability to get all the funds, the capital, to open up a full-scale restaurant.
Yep.
But we did enjoy going to coffee houses because we were college students. So, we thought, okay, we could do this. We take all our restaurant background and knowledge and open up a coffee shop, and we don't have to deal with front of house, back of house. It's just one area. And plus, it would allow us to be creative, to be able to bring some of our background on teas, because we knew that there's a lot more teas than what was available to most people, just because of our Asian background. And we could bring some other beverages, coffee beverages, that are also Asian-based, too.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. So you put those liberal arts degrees to work and decided to get into the restaurant business, and the scaled down side a little bit based on, again, the amount of capital you had. Did you have the vision back then that this was going to be what it's become? Or were you just sort of looking to replicate what your families had done before and have a successful restaurant, like one?
We were really looking at just having one at the time. And the funny thing was, when we went to our family to just ask to be able to borrow money, and we still needed to borrow money to start this business, the reaction that we got was, these are very kind of old school restaurant people. Also, immigrants, not being born here in the U.S. And they looked at us and they said, why would you open a coffee house?
Right.
How are you going to make a business out of selling 50-cent gas station coffee? That's just not, and they didn't provide any loans to us.
So I have to ask the question. This is obviously when you were in your 20s, right? Mm-hmm. So had there been a such thing as a $10 coffee yet? Or did they just not realize that they're sometimes you can charge per syllable if you get the chance?
Well, I mean, as you recall, back then it was really watered down coffee.
Yeah.
It was $1 a cup of coffee.
Right.
And free refills, that sort of thing. But I think what Lisa was referring to was I went to some of my uncles and stuff like that, and like Lisa mentioned, they were really old school.
Yeah.
I clearly recall one of them saying to me, like, how would you make it just selling donuts and coffee?
Right.
And in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, but we're doing it differently, right?
Right.
And there
Yeah.
were other coffee houses at the time.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, some of the larger,
Sure.
Big Green Mermaid, that was of it there. But it was early days,
Yeah.
and certainly these relatives of ours, they didn't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like we're programmed not to understand that, right? I mean, like when from generation to generation, I'm sure your children are coming up with this crazy idea right now to take over the world, and you just won't see it the way your parents did.
You're
guessing the
absolutely
same way.
right. You're absolutely right.
But that's very cool. And so I'm guessing they said, well, we're not really seeing what you see. And maybe not as politely, I'm guessing. I don't know. That's what it would have been in my family. But they said, no, you're
Yes.
got it.
Correct.
Got it.
These were like more uncles, and our direct family
Yeah.
had a lot of love for us and
Yeah,
believed in us, and so they helped. So.
Yeah, I sometimes think even the no's, and even sometimes the no comes out of a place of love and respect. They just want to see us succeed.
But it does
they don't
put a
always-
fire under you, right?
Yeah, well, I'll show you, Uncle Frank.
Right. Hey, you
Uncle-
got one.
Uncle Tom.
You got one of their names right.
Did I really? That was a total guess. See, Tommy, that's like the universe rewarding this podcast.
Wow.
That never happens. We don't ever get rewarded like that. I know I
funny.
just blew the moment.
That is funny.
That's pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't even have guessed the name would be Frank, but hey, if it shoe fits. All right, so you end up with a coffee shop, one coffee shop, and you get there by virtue of the amount of money you had to spend to make it happen. But you then made the most of it. You decided if you're going to be a coffee shop, you're going to make it work. Did you guys have this idea of Sweetwaters coffee and tea? I know you mentioned like the teas from from overseas and the the coffee selections. There was definitely something there. But did you have the concept of the brand and what you guys are doing now nailed that early, or when did that happen?
I mean, definitely when we started, we did not think it was going to be like this. I mean, what would you say?
I would say that when we first opened the cafe, I think our main focus was just trying to make it work, trying to pay
Yeah.
the bills. We started a family right away, and for us, it was the only way it was up, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it took. So we worked a lot. I remember from opening to close. But as the cafe started to take shape, it got busier and busier. Of course, when success comes to you, then it kind of offers other opportunities, right?
Right.
And one of those opportunities became like, well, being in the university town, we have a lot of students that go there for their school, and then they
Yeah.
eventually leave, get a job somewhere else in another city, and we've
I think I know where this is going.
get comments about how I wish, because they would come back and watch the football game and stuff, and they would always come in and visit us, and they would say, I wish we had Sweetwaters in where I live,
Right.
And then so that kind of I don't know, lit a opportunity, right, Lisa?
Yeah, so I think at that point we decided to
find a way.
think about it, because we had young kids, and for us to open more locations outside of Ann Arbor was just not feasible.
Right.
So we started looking into it as we were starting to think about it and work with some people to help us understand the franchising business. We just serendipitously had somebody inquire about a franchise, and they happened to be right in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And
Now, and were they a student graduating who worked at your? Okay, that's where I thought you were going. Is you got it? Okay.
so it was just somebody, a local person in Ann Arbor. His kids actually went to the same school as our kids.
Yeah, okay.
And we didn't know him. And he was a franchisee for another concept, but, he wanted to do something different. And he asked if we ever thought about franchising. And we said, well, matter of fact, we are starting a program. And the person that we worked with said, this is a perfect opportunity. If you have a franchisee right here in Ann Arbor, you can understand all the kind of operations you need to do to support a franchisee without being so
Right.
far away. And you can keep an eye on the franchisee just to make sure that you're providing the right kind of support.
And so did you have like the one main location that is, okay, the corporate location, that's yours, and that was sort of the hub to learn from and to experiment with? And
Absolutely.
got it. Okay. And is that the place that I visited
Yeah.
downtown? Okay. And you've got several in Ann Arbor, right?
Yeah, I think we have like 7 in Ann Arbor. 4 of them are our corporate locations, and the others are franchisees.
Got it. Okay, that makes total sense. So that was the first opportunity. Somebody came and said, well, "I'd like to do this again," and you thought, "Opportunity, it's a knocking," and there you go.
And it always knocks at the oddest times. So.
Right.
Well, the interesting fact about that one was that we were at the time negotiating another location.
In Ann Arbor.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Ann Arbor, and then when Chris, this franchisee, came up to us and asked, and we actually decided to give up the space for him.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, and then well, he just renewed for another term. So
No kidding.
So he's our longest standing franchisee. He's been our franchisee, I think, for maybe 17, 18 years now.
Wow.
So,
Well, that's pretty special.
Yeah.
And it been with you for that whole time.
correct.
yeah,
Got
from
it.
the very beginning of our franchise journey.
Wow. And so, and I forgot to mention this earlier, so or ask, how many locations do you have now?
By the end of the year, we will have 40.
Wow, 40. And how is that growth from like the last, I mean, through the pandemic? Did you guys have to pump the brakes on that for a while, or?
We opened a lot during the pandemic, but it was only because they were already in the system. They were already in the process of building, and the pandemic
Totally get
happened.
that,
So,
yeah.
but we had to learn how to support them, and we had to learn how to do openings and grand openings with distancing and people
Yeah.
not coming out. So
And it's a scary time to look, scary time for everybody, but it's especially scary time as an entrepreneur, sort of at the helm of the ship, I suppose. Just not knowing, because I'm guessing it was your first pandemic too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we were washing our bags down, our grocery bags.
oh my gosh.
And that was a special moment for us because we actually had a director from the University of Michigan come do it wasn't a podcast then, it was a meeting. And we got to learn, I think, maybe a week before the rest of the world knew, y'all don't have to wash your bags anymore.
Oh, really?
But you should separate, from one another. And we thought,
boy.
good idea. But anyway, so that's very interesting. So this is some of the background. You have all these locations, and I noticed too that they're kind of spread out. It's not like just regional. Like you guys have done things a little bit differently in that regard. And does that make it challenging? I'm thinking like if you had a McDonald's, for example, you have to be within the regional area of where all the bread's made, and you sort of dispatch from there. But you don't have that challenge, do you? You can kind of just pop up anywhere.
Well, with anything, when you're learning something, there's probably things that you do that you wouldn't necessarily do again.
Like all of the time for me. Got it.
So, we probably got some advice that wasn't the best advice, just to kind of open wherever.
Yeah.
And if I were to do it again, I would not do that. It is a challenge.
Sure.
Having it so spread out. But, I like to look at the silver lining, and the silver lining is, would I have expected that Texas would be one of our biggest markets? No. And would I expect that people in Texas would like some of our drinks that are unique to Sweetwaters and love them so much? I was very surprised.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Wow. So that is interesting. So let's talk about that a little bit. So, some of that initial thought you had, what I'm seeing is it probably carried through till today. Like you are recognized as having like some specialty items that you just can't get anywhere else. And is that the core sort of secret, if there's a secret sauce? Not that you want to lay it out, but I mean, but for real, like I could go to a Sweetwaters and I'm going to order something that I just can't get everywhere.
You're right. I mean, that is the secret sauce. I mean, we are globally inspired. We have beverages that are unique to Sweetwaters. So I'll give you for an example, French Vietnamese Olay. So it's French chicory coffee that's sweetened and in a particular way, and people love it. And so people, Texas, Arizona, constantly comes up and comments, and just we can see the sales.
Wow.
And I would not have expected that.
Yeah.
Very, very surprising to me.
And is it fascinating to learn that, why is it successful here? And sometimes it doesn't always carry over, does it? Like if you do all the math and you lay everything out and you read all the charts, you're where you're supposed to be at the time you're supposed to be, and what gives? Like, and sometimes people spend so much money trying to figure that out. It doesn't always play out, does it? It's just in being in business, you just have to have a gut for it. And you just kind of make the most. What about some of the other things? I heard somebody I was talking to about the same question I'm going to ask you here in another podcast is of, you'll have people in different parts of the country that have unique circumstances. They don't sell grits at all of the, pancake houses for that reason, right? But if we don't have them, we're going to be in trouble in this particular area. Do you have some of that happening? And are there people that want to see you add menu items that you're trying to throttle back on and control, or what is that like?
Well, I could just share one funny story, right, Lisa? So we were opening up a location in Arizona, Phoenix, and it's a drive-through. And I think they had like just the day of the day before they opened, they tried to open up the drive-through just to kind of get the kinks out. And the woman goes through, orders an iced tea, and then we served it in our largest size at the time, which is a triple.
Yeah.
And she got the drink. She looked at the container, the cup size, and she said to my manager, like, is this the largest that you carry? And then my manager said, yes. And then she said something
It's not
to
large
the
enough.
effect, oh, no, honey. You guys will not survive here. Remember, you're in Arizona, okay? You're going to need something much bigger than this.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
right away, my manager reported back to us, like, I think we have an issue here. So right away, we came up with the quad size, which is a
Yep.
big
Got it. So
size.
now is that just Arizona, or is that
No,
something
it's
you-
everywhere now.
So, and this is where you guys, I would struggle probably the hardest because I'd like to please everybody in the moment. And if you did that, you wouldn't have the Sweetwaters you have today. Let's just face it, right? So you have to, like, part of the art is knowing what to push back on, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
even if the
That's true.
mechanics are telling you it would work, if it doesn't, like, if it's going to be a different Sweetwaters, it's not Sweetwaters.
Yeah, I mean, there have been people who've asked, franchisees or guests that have asked for certain products that are popular in the moment, frozen yogurt,
Yeah.
boba tea, stuff like that. And
Right.
it's, you have to be able to focus and, understand your operations and try to keep it as simple as possible.
Right. Because your customer just isn't me coming by grabbing, and by the way, just full disclosure, that's not your product in there. Not going to pretend
okay.
it is. It's a Diet Coke. But I've got the right cup for it here.
Exactly.
But your customer sometimes is obviously the consumer drinking the coffee or tea, but it's also the franchisee who's just invested their whatever they had to work with, and their Uncle Frank, who they just asked. So we have like their investment at play, and sometimes your decision isn't necessarily their decision, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the franchising sort of piece. You have to tolerate. I would be horrible at that.
I think it's funny because we have friends that will say, oh, because they work for larger corporations, and they go, you don't know what it's like to have a boss and a supervisor, da 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 da. And I'm like, you don't understand how many bosses I have.
That's right.
All the guests, all the franchisees. I'm like, I have a lot of bosses I have
Right.
to listen to.
That's true.
Yeah, you're so right. By the way, totally true. Do you have many franchisees who've like gone deeper within the chain? Do they have? Do you have like a group of locations for a few people, as an example?
We have multi-unit franchisees.
You do?
For sure. Yeah, we have probably about 3 or 4. Yep.
Got it. Got it. And that's got to be exciting to see. You know, obviously, if it's working in one location, they're gonna pop up another one.
That's right.
So
yeah.
it's a
Very
it's a good
exciting.
sign.
They take all that learning and translate that into their next location, and generally they just do better and better.
Got it. I always like to ask the question, what was if there was one big struggle you had, was there one that you're comfortable sharing along the way? There almost always is. And did you have some hurdle you had to get through that maybe people don't often see from the sidelines? I liken it to, you know, the duck in the water that looks nice and calm and pristine, but then when you go down under the water line, they're pedaling like crazy and nobody knows that that's happening.
Yeah, that's very true. I would say my biggest hurdle is, I would say that when we first started to pursue the franchising side of our business, I really had a hard time letting go of the idea of somebody, not myself, running Sweetwaters.
Yeah.
You know, I said to myself, okay, I hope it's going to be perfect. It's kind of like you raising a child,
Right.
and then somebody else adopting your child, right?
Yeah,
And you hope that
totally.
whoever's adopting your child is going to nurture, educate, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that was my biggest hurdle is letting go of your concept to someone
That sounds like
else.
that was a philosophical hurdle. Like you had to get your mind around.
Exactly,
I have
yeah.
to I have to challenge myself to allow this to happen. Is what
Correct,
what I'm
right.
hearing. Was that a hurdle for you too?
I mean, in some sense, but then when we started visiting stores or cafes, it was amazing to see some of these franchisees. They did some things that we never thought of, and we're like, "Wow, this is great!" You know?
So oftentimes they'll drift into things that you really don't want. I know, I get that because that you think about, but they often bring you into places that you probably wouldn't have thought of. You're having some extra entrepreneurial thoughts going on behind the scenes that can help push the envelope a bit.
Great ideas come from our franchisees, for
Right.
sure.
How do you guys synthesize that? How do you embrace it and have you cracked that code yet?
In terms of embracing new ideas from franchisees?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's just part of our job.
Yeah, so
You know, we expect that and we encourage that and foster that. Yeah, some of the best ideas have come from our franchisees. That collaborative relationship is what we want, ideally.
It's interesting how when that finally clicks, you know, we're not a franchise here, but you saw probably some evidence of the fact that, you know, a lot of the answers to the challenges in business are actually in the building. And you don't have to hire like expensive consultants to do that. You just have to ask the people in the job that might have a better way of doing things.
Yeah, sure.
So what I'm hearing is that you thought for a moment maybe you should run from that, and then you turned around and ran right towards it, like getting their input and seeking that out.
Correct. I would say that Lisa's right. Like that was my initial heartache, but when we visited some of these franchise locations, you walk in there, you just feel this energy,
Yeah.
and yes, it's the same drinks, it's the same decor, but the energy is brought on by the owner or the operator.
Right.
Okay, and then you realize wow, in some ways they're running it better than you.
Yeah. Right.
So that's when you realize, wow, this thing's really magical.
Yeah.
And then they're making great sales, and then you're saying to yourself, wow, all is well. This is great.
Well, loaded question alert. Here it comes. Do they run themselves, or does there always have to be somebody at the helm that gives you know what about the day to day?
There has to be someone there. It doesn't have to be the franchisee. It
Got
could
it,
be their
okay.
manager, but yeah, there has to be somebody there that cares about the brand, cares about the business. There's no substitute.
So there can be, like what I'm hearing, like an investor who wants to be in that business, but as long as they have the right integrator in the seat, you know, the right manager, kind of like what I do here, you know. So
I'll give you a qualified yes. I mean, they can't they can't come in and be an absentee owner.
Got it.
They cannot. You know, they have to be really focused on their business.
Yeah.
And they have to understand how to run it. So they can't come in and just get a manager and expect the manager to run it, and they don't know anything about it, because if that manager leaves, they have to jump right in.
Totally get that.
You made a comment, Bill, kind of like you, right? You, to me, seem like a very, very charismatic leader.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
that.
to me, if you're not here in your business, it'd be probably very different, right? I think same thing for us. The owner that opens Sweetwaters, right, has to make sure everything's done correctly. It's all about consistency.
Right.
You know, when the guests come in and you know, they're gonna try you a couple of times, but when the product or the beverages are made wrong,
Yeah.
you know, chances are they're not gonna come back to you again, right? So
Right.
as an owner, you have to just be there and make sure the staff is well trained, executes.
Yeah, that's right. That's so often so unfair to me. My wife and I are watching this Netflix series right now. It's of course gonna be all I talk about because this is the one we're watching now. But it's the soccer player.
Beckham?
Yeah, Beckham.
I
Like
just
it's
started
always
watching that.
always the wife that mentions Beckham, of course, right? But yes, I mean, like all the stuff that happened to this guy, I had no idea.
I know. It's been amazing.
And you look at it and you're like, you know, I'm sorry. Yeah, he made a mistake, but really, did we went a little too far? And I'm bringing it around to say that I'll oftentimes see always on social media, you know, somebody goes to a car wash and they have a bad experience, or they missed a spot. And all of a sudden they decide the best thing to do, rather than tell the person who owns the car wash, or maybe just run it through again, which would probably be no problem. The better thing to do would be to get on social media and tell the whole planet what a horrible thing just happened to you. I take like so much offense to that because I know the struggle, and I know that that there's usually somebody there in a seat that goes to the great lengths to make sure that everybody knows how to do their job. But instead of a robot doing it and not paying somebody, they've decided to bring a human into that business who can make a mistake, and we all do. And that's what you rewarded him with. Is you know, it's just I'm always often afraid that, you know, when they have a bad cup of coffee, what's the real cost of that cup of coffee? It's not oftentimes just losing a customer. It's losing a customer and 20 stories that go with it at the corner, you know, shop about what a horrible place, you know, your company is. Do you guys see a fair amount of that? It's probably all over the place.
That's the day we live in, unfortunately.
yeah.
We take those, so we do this, and then we instruct our franchisees to do this too, but to take the feedback, even the negative feedback, as an opportunity, right? So there was somebody who I remember was very upset with our coffee, and long email on some kind of, you know, review platform, maybe it was Yelp or something.
Yeah.
We saw it, and then, you know, we reached out to them and said, you know, we're really sorry, you know, we're going to look into it. You know, Wei ended up looking into it and found that there was some issue with our equipment. And so we explained that to the guests. We said, you know, we realize that there was an issue with the equipment. We really appreciate you bringing this up to us. We'd like to invite you in to taste
that.
all of our coffees and find a coffee that you love. And you would be working directly with one of the co-founders, who would be Wei. And so he accepted, and he came in, and, you know, long story short, he ended up putting in another review saying how much he loved our coffee and loved meeting Wei, and so responsive. And so, I mean, we use that story again and again for franchisees, because oftentimes this is the first time they're in this type of business where you get that instantaneous feedback.
You're so right. I mean, I wish I'd have learned so much early on in my career that the mistake everybody's so worried about making isn't where the true genesis comes from. It's the day after the mistake, and what happens then that you're frankly judged on in the end. And life would have been so much easier for me if I'd learned that sooner. But I love that story. So you brought somebody in who you probably at first read, you know, weren't all that happy with.
It's painful. It's like a stake in the heart.
Yeah, but you turned it around, and that's just brilliant.
Well, you know, this guy, turned out to be a genuinely nice guy, right? He was just so, because he's so concerned about his coffee house that he goes to all the time.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what is going on with your coffee? Something's going on. So
Right.
I think he really appreciated us reaching out to him and rectifying the situation.
Right.
But yeah, he was. We had a really good, I don't know what, couple of hours of just talking and tasting coffee. Yeah, he was. He became a even better
Yeah.
guest.
That's awesome.
In the long term.
And sometimes there might be a flaw or a problem, but do you ever find that like somebody just doesn't like the coffee, and like that's okay. Like it's you have a discrete brand, and that maybe that taste isn't for everyone. We're kind of the same way. We're a fit, we'd like to say, for most people, but we're certainly not a fit for everybody. That goes for customers alike as well as employees. We have dogs in the building, and that's part of our special DNA. We're probably not the best place to come call your work home if you don't like dogs, or you're going to be miserable. So we just, I don't think we need to like hide that or be ashamed of it. Let's just make this the place where you can bring your dog to work and have it not be a problem, unless the dog, needs. We had a dog getting written up the other day because he was barking a little more than normal. And it's
Really?
funny, I saw an employee walking into HR's office. I'm like, oh, he doesn't think he's in trouble. He knows it's the dog, and sure enough, we were laughing. What do you do? But
Did he get written up, or did he get a verbal
dog
warning?
needed a written warning in that instance. But we're dog friendly, but they're not always friendly with each other. I wish I could bring Bojangles, my dog. I tried to, but he's just a pussycat at home. But I bring him in here, and he likes to sort of defend the office, and like he growled one time. I'm like, oh man, I can't bring the dog here. I don't want it.
That's like our two dogs.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very protective. They're very packy, and
Yeah. Well, I think just in general, like you just can own who you are in that brand, and gosh, if it was easy to be everything to everybody, we'd probably all do it, but you can't. So I think you guys handled that stuff pretty well. Tell me this. So you both grew up in the restaurant business. You both had family there. You stayed in business, but you didn't stay in the same business. Where do you think your kids are headed? Or to put you on the spot, or did they? I mean, I thought I met them. I know I probably met a few of them, but I didn't know you had an extended family there too. So it was hard for me to tell who was who.
I guess Lisa can answer. But
we have three sons, and two of them have been graduated for a while, and then the last one is a junior at U of M.
Okay.
And nope, they don't have any desire to be
No.
in the business. Kind of like
All
when
three.
we met your son, we're like, why not do this?
I'm a little sore about the subject, so
I hear you.
to be
Trust me,
honest,
I hear
yeah.
Yeah. But it's just not their thing. And, I guess I'm not going to lie in terms of, we have like, 36 franchisees, 35 franchisees. You have put 35 people in a room, they're not all going to get along. Very unlikely,
Of course,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so they've seen some of that.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah. Right.
I do not want that.
It's interesting because sometimes I think you just, we all don't get that choice. Ultimately they're going to do what they like to do. But sometimes they might come back around once they test the waters, a little bit out there as well, pun intended, I guess. Right.
You tell me when that happens with you.
Yeah, I will. It didn't. He's gone for good. He's,
Oh, really?
Although with the strike, the UAW strike,
that's
he's
right.
impacted by that. He's an engineer for a supplier, and I'm as happy as my most miserable child. So he's going to start being miserable soon, and then I'll be bummed, and try to pretend not to be. But you never know. But our industry is unique, just as I suppose others are. And you're not in the AV business because you want to make the most money as an engineer or a project manager. Like there's other jobs out there to go do that. You have to have a little love for what we do. It's also hard to leave this business because our hearts are usually in it in some ways. Not all just like geekdom. I'm saying like there's some things in our industry that are really kind of special, and you pick up on it. For me, an employee can if they want to be in the industry, that's fantastic. That's obviously the person we want to focus on here. But there are some people that just did not wake up and say, I want to be an AV project coordinator for my whole life. And this may be like a chapter in their journey as a career. And if that's the case, that's fine with me. Let's just make it a fun chapter they'll remember. and kind of celebrate that. But then there's always like a very, very small, hopefully like down to close to zero, but the very small group who are in the wrong building and it's miserable to them and they don't like the business either. I hope we catch those folks and help them find their way to what does make them happy, because that can dilute the beauty of what we're trying to build everywhere else. I thought we've done a pretty good job at doing that. Do you guys have the same sort of thing in your industry, not just your business? I mean, because people will drop in and probably as a barista, and do they stay or?
I mean, we always tell people we don't expect them that this is their forever job, but no matter where you work, you're going to have a customer, a client, something. And so the sooner you learn how to deal with those customer clients and that interaction, communication, here's your opportunity. Do it here, learn here, because you're going to have to take those skills and go on to your next job. But most of our staff, if they start out as a freshman in college, they usually stay there, on and off throughout their whole college career. Occasionally, we might get some high schoolers that will come in and stay on during college. But I mean, we've had so many staff, and it's been so interesting to see what they've ended up doing. And they come home occasionally, and they'll want to see us. And just recently, some young lady came home. All of her siblings worked for us.
Oh,
So
no
she was
kidding.
the youngest, and her oldest brother ended up, he decided college wasn't for him. He wanted to talk to us about becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I remember when he was a senior in college, we sat down and talked to him, and he asked us a bunch of questions, and he ended up, I think, joining the armed forces. I'm not sure I'm not sure if it was Marines or Army.
Yeah.
And he became like an intelligence officer, and he just retired. And now he finally his sister told us, he finally has started his own business, what he always wanted to do.
What business?
He's making furniture.
Really?
Yeah. And his youngest sister, so his middle sister worked for us. She's a nurse. His youngest sister, who worked for us, so she's Caucasian, she ended up learning how to speak fluent Korean.
Oh, awesome.
And
Okay.
it was so much fun to see it,
Yeah.
because we had a staff person who's from Korea working for us, and we're like, go speak to him in Korean.
Yeah.
And so she started speaking to him in full Korean, and he was like shocked. This little blonde girl talking to him in Korean, and I think those are all the fun stories, to see our staff, what they do, what they end up, growing up to be, and having them come home.
That's right, and make their experience with Sweetwaters something they'll remember. So that's the great way to put it, because that it's not it'll always be for everybody, but we'd like for them to touch back and see that this is a part of it. And we've had a couple people here even move on, and our comment is pay it forward. Go do some of the things here. Come back and tell us what you've picked up on that we're not doing that maybe we could or should be doing. And just keep it going forward. This somebody once told me it was like a third of your life is spent at work. If a third of your life is spent at work, instead of everybody talking about working from home, home from work, like make work part of your home and make it as close to that as you can, so that if you don't enjoy what you do, it's work. It's sometimes we all have bad days, but why not make it?
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. Just you have to love what you do, and if you don't, then you should be doing something else.
Totally, exactly. I told you this was going to fly by, right? And it is. So I'm gonna try to get a couple questions out that I still want to ask. We talked about Korean language, and we've talked about some of the history and different parts of the world where you grew up. What's next for Sweetwaters? Obviously, you guys are nationwide. Do you see yourself opening up in different countries, or is that just too far off in the distance?
That's such a hard question, because if you would have asked us when we, 5 years into it, can you imagine yourself in, 12 different states? I'd say no. So
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea.
See where it kind of
Yeah, I
goes.
mean, we're going to still continue to grow within the United States for sure. And there's so much opportunity. But beyond that, I'm not really sure.
Growing, like it's not just people, it rolls off the tongue easily, like, oh, we're going to just grow. But you have to have your operations to support 50 locations are significantly different than you can just open 300 on a whim without like some serious investments in supporting that. That's got to be so difficult to try to manage. Exciting, but difficult. And so you guys have thoughts on growing and continuing, at least when you look at it now, even though you said you're not regional, you've got like a hub and spoke in these different locations. You could potentially, you're rooted in some of these cities you can grow from a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Expanding into the cities that we're already in.
Yeah. I mean, you had how many again in Ann Arbor now?
In Ann Arbor, I think we have 7.
And it's probably the most populated because that's the hometown, right?
Right.
Got it. So it sounds like that's the next phase is you're going to continue to grow in the U.S., maybe North America first.
Right. Yeah.
Got it.
Unless you have some different ideas.
I would say that just to add to what Lisa said, there's so much opportunity to grow here, but for me, it's you never say never. If somebody with the expertise, wherewithal to help us expand internationally, I would be a fool to say no. I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't listen to it. Right.
Sure.
I know some of the American brands. For example, like Yum brand, they run a Kentucky Fried Chicken. What are other brands, Lisa? Like
I don't remember. But you're talking about in China?
Right. They actually do better there than here.
Really?
Oh yeah. And but again, it's another market. It's more complication. Whether or not we want to take that opportunity, I just don't know. But I would say never say never.
Yeah. No, that's you keep an open mind. You had to have had an open mind to go where you went.
Right.
I'm having a hard time figuring out who the visionary is and who's the integrator. We call it like who says we need to go do this and who says we have to know how to do it. First.
I think it's a little bit of both. There are
That's probably
times
why that's
where,
so difficult to find out.
Yeah, there are. For example, I'll give you an example. About 20 years ago, when we learned China just started to open, right? And I told Lisa, and I said, hey, whether or not we eventually expand there, we should just trademark our name. Okay?
Yeah.
So we should just get that done. And
Just kind of prepare for that.
For whatever, right? So we did that. But now I think it depends on what we're talking about. Sometimes I'm more the visionary, and sometimes I'm more the like, no, I don't think we should do that. So the roles are constantly changing, right, Lisa?
Yeah, I think in terms of products and drinks, I definitely think that
Oh, I'll give it to you.
marketing, kind of the creative stuff,
Yeah.
I'm always trying to, keep on pushing the limits.
Have you guys settled into the swim lanes that you have? I mean, you had to have at some point, very comfortably, right? But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're pretty, people think that because we worked, well, first of all, our friends just cannot believe that we work together. They're like, how could you work with your spouse?
Yeah.
But I said, actually, we used to work
How do you
together.
still like each other?
Yeah.
And so, if you don't mind, like, how many years have you guys been married?
I don't remember.
30,
He always remembers.
33 years.
Happily married years?
I would say 98% of the time.
And that, my friend, is the best. You are a very smart man.
98%.
No, but joking aside, it is kind of tricky. I mean, my wife and I had a business for a while, and for us, it was very easy to see who was the person who really knew what we should do, and who was the one that wanted just to go, do whatever. And very easy to see. Harder to see from the two of you. But some people have a knack for understanding what the phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 look like, and some are just so focused on phase 1 and so excited about it. You should have a yin and a yang, otherwise you find yourself in trouble. You've got to be able to like respectfully challenge each other with decisions, just like any leadership team, I suppose. But I think that's where that question came out of from your friends. It's because how do you disagree in the boardroom and then go home and just have happy dinner around the dinner table like nothing happened.
Well, that doesn't always happen.
Got it. I teed it up for you, Lisa. You could have.
I mean, there are definitely debates that go on beyond, the conference room into the car, into dinner, and then eventually.
Sometimes it was driving by myself at night. Just to get away. Right.
Well, it's very admirable. Obviously, you guys, you care enough about your business, your people, and your product and your brand to have those challenges. And I think without it, it wouldn't be who you are. Like you have to be able to do that. So I have to ask one last thing, and then anything I missed that you want to get out there too. Don't want to miss that opportunity. But do you have people asking you how this new sort of AI craziness that's going on out there? Everything is AI right now. Are people asking how that's going to change your business? Are people wondering about, are we going to have, robots serving coffee to everybody? They're actually doing that now. I have some things I'm going to show you later that I stumbled upon. But are there concerns? Are there interests? Like, tell me what your thought is about this chaos with AI.
I think, first of all, I'm in awe of what it can do.
Yeah.
But as far as for our business, it hasn't really come into play yet, right, Lisa?
I mean, I think it creeps in there a little bit slowly, like we see a generation of kids, well, they're not really kids, but where they prefer not to speak to somebody.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So it
Very
kind
sad.
of creeps in like, okay, are you going to have kiosk ordering?
Right.
And at first, we're like, why would you want kiosk? I
Right.
mean, it's so much fun to talk to someone.
Right.
And I'm like, no way. And then I started hearing all the comments from our staff that are in their 20s. They're like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'd rather order on the app. I don't want to do this. I'm like, really? You don't want to talk to, you don't want to like ask questions? No, I don't want to ask anything. And I was like, it enlightened me a little bit because I was like, I would have never thought that.
I love that you just said this because I'm going to challenge you for a little because this got me pretty hard too. I said the exact same thing. And then somebody asked me, did your parents ever used to have like Folgers in the cupboard, and maybe some pound cake, just in case somebody dropped by the house at 4:00? And the answer was, yup. Could you imagine how horrible that would be today if somebody stopped by your house unannounced at say 7:00? And would you meet him at the door with that Folgers and pound cake, or would you like tell everybody what just happened and don't ever talk to this person again? I think that's us if we're not at least paying attention to this new, the new way people are communicating. And believe me, I fight it every day the same way. But things like we started looking at commencement speeches from the students graduating from campuses, and I was fascinated, not in a good way all the time, just fascinated by how much things are changing. And just from an employment perspective, people want to leave their profession, or they want to go into profession, and they're first, like themselves, what they're doing, what they're all about. And we've lost I'm going to go become an engineer and design the tallest building and do this amazing thing for humanity and grow society, whatever. That's not what they're saying right now. And we need to understand that. I mean, we meaning like all of us, any employer. And if we're not checking those boxes properly, we're not going to have people to hire. Yeah. It's just going to become tricky, it's already tricky, but it's going to become trickier to do that. So pun intended and joking aside, like things change and we either change with it or we become we get left behind.
You don't want to be left behind, for sure.
No, you don't. Well, listen, I am so grateful you guys came. I knew it would be fun. Certainly fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the chat.
Very
We
much.
did. Thank you.
We appreciate you, and we certainly appreciate the business. I wish I could tell you I knew everything that we do. I know that you're a customer, and I'm grateful for that. And so thank you for that, too. But it's been a lot of fun every time we've gotten together. Let's stay in touch and do some more things. I'd love for you to meet my better half. Well, you have actually a little bit, but maybe over like a dinner or something like that at some point. We should catch up.
Absolutely.
But thank you guys for coming. Thanks for being a part of the Morning Toast and for being a part of PTG.
Thank you for inviting us, and we always appreciate working with your team.
Awesome.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good. Tommy, how did we do? Did we do good?
Did great.
Awesome.
episode.
All right.
Thank you, Tommy.
We'll see everybody.
Bill.
Thanks
Yep.
for joining.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
The Morning Toast.